once again, really this whole light thing, that's the nucleus of the egg, but this is also the egg. They're huge. This is the egg, and just the outer dark purple edge are the follicle cells. They're epithelial squamous cells.
So it's a cell within a cell?
Yeah, so it's like a giant cell, a huge cell, the egg, surrounded by follicle cells, called their squamous epithelial cells. And the whole, so yeah, a huge cell surrounded by flattened squamous cells. And the whole thing is called the primordial follicle. So that's the way they stay. Everybody gets the picture? Then, starting at puberty, a few of them get recruited. And by the way, if you're working ahead in the objective sheet, there is left. If you do work ahead before next Tuesday, there's one objective question that you're going to have trouble answering from the book. What is recruitment and selection? So, because I use those terms, I think it makes everything make a lot more sense, but our books don't use it. So you can just, wait. You can Google it probably, or you can just wait till Tuesday, and I make sure you get that in your notes clearly, because I write it on the board what they mean. But for me, it makes everything much easier. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but reproductive endocrinology, that was my major in graduate school. So I know what I'm talking about. So under this now is what they call a primary follicle. So starting at puberty, a few follicles are going to get recruited, and they're going to turn into this. So you see the difference? There's a huge egg. It's gigantic. We're not seeing its nucleus right now, but sometimes you would. And then see how it used to be just a flattened squamous, one layer of squamous cells, and now it's like 3 or 4 layers. So the egg actually doesn't change at all. It's these cells that change. So the squamous cells divide and become like cuboidally looking. So that's called primary follicle. So I'm going to take a picture of that. That's called primary follicle. It's one egg, and now there's just not one layer of cells around it, but like 3 or 4, thicker wall around it. Okay? All right, and then a little while later, the primary follicle becomes a secondary follicle. There's 4 follicles you got to look for: primordial, primary, secondary, and then the big tertiary or Graafian follicle. So this is the one I was having trouble finding it. So here, this one here, I'm finding it. Oh, here we go. Okay, the way it's too big now. I'll have to go down so you can see it all. Oh, what? I hope you can see this. Okay, now this one right here is a secondary follicle, and here's the what you use to distinguish them. The primary follicle that I just showed you had a solid ring of cells around it. Okay, but once you start seeing a crack develop in it, I don't know if that looks like a crack to you. There's like a big cavity forming in there, and there's some stuff in there. That's why it's not all white, but this is actually a cavity forming. Once you start seeing that, that's a secondary follicle. And you start seeing this cavity develop in here. Okay, I was trying to find a better one where it looked a little more like they were just evaporating them. Talking to them. Anyway, this is a secondary follicle. And then a little while later, then what's going to happen is you're going to have maybe 20 of these in the ovary, and then those are the recruited ones, and they actually crank out, on this lecture now, but they crank out a bunch of estrogen is what they do. But then, unfortunately for them, most of them are going to die, so it's a sad story. It really is. It's so sad. Most of them are going to die. They undergo what's called atresia. And then usually just one lucky one gets selected. So that's the recruitment and selection. So one lucky one gets selected to continue developing, and the others are going to die off. And the one that's selected becomes the Graafian follicle. And it looks like, there's a good one. Okay, here it is. It's this is the Graafian follicle. It starts here. I don't know if you can tell. and the big thing is it has this gigantic cavity in it. It's huge, and has this big cavity. It's called the antrum. You have to learn that. It's on your sheet. This is the tertiary follicle. It goes by 3 names. You can pick any one you want. Tertiary follicle, graphene is kind of the old name, based on some of the scientists, Dr. Graphene or something. And then, it's also called mature follicle. Okay, and so it's the lucky one in that it survives. And what's lucky about this one is that this is the egg here. See, there's its nucleus, there's the egg. This is the egg that's going to get released from the ovary that month into the fallopian tube. This is the egg that might get fertilized. So that's what's important about the tertiary follicle, is that that's the egg that's going to get ovulated. The others, like I said, they underwent atresia. Oh, actually, see this over here? I don't know if you can see very well. It's starting to develop cracks in it. That's maybe a better secondary follicle than the one I showed you. The one I showed you was a little more advanced, so I'm afraid it looked a little too much like this one. But if you start seeing like what looks like primary, but you see cracks in it, that's a good secondary follicle. Anyway, you see it's grown a lot. And it, so what do you have to know about it besides that? I already lost your paper. You have to know the oocyte, okay, or like I said, you can call it ovum or egg, that's fine. You have to know the antrum, that's the big cavity here. It's filled with fluid, they call it follicular fluid. And then you have to know the granulose and fecal cells. This is a review from endocrine system, but you might have forgotten that. So we looked at this when we did the endocrine system. Can you kind of see the difference between these two? So the outer cells are the ones, you know, the feca cells. They're the ones that make testosterone. They're the T feca for testosterone. They make testosterone, and these are the granulose cells that convert to estrogen. I mean, way longer. So hence the graphene tertiary or graphene follicle makes estrogen. Does it make progesterone? No, it does not. No follicles make estrogen. Something else makes estrogen. I mean progesterone, but none of the follicles do. So that's the tertiary follicle. Our ovary slides, by the way, are from cats, not humans. So you might see 2 or 3 of these on one slide if you're looking on your own, because but humans you should just see 1, sometimes 2, or women that take. This is why women that take fertility drugs can have 5 embryos develop, because they cause more graphene follicles to develop. Okay, so that's the ovary slide. It's identifying these different follicles. So on your lab practical, I'll ask you what. I'll probably tell you it's an ovary slide. I'm gonna have to zoom in usually so you can see these things, and I'll just ask you identify the follicle, or in this case, what's that cavity called? What's that? And so on. What are these cells called? And let's see what I left off. Okay. So I'll leave this up here. If you want to go back to a different part of the slide, let me know and I'll put it back. But I'll leave this for you to take a picture. Sperm. Well, I'll put the sperm up in a few minutes, or should I just do it now?
No.
I can put this back.
It's just a head and tail, right?
I mean, there's really not, it's not
Needle.
that much to see.
No, in the
Yeah.
middle? There's no needle. It's head and tail. Yeah. In the middle, I think it's in the lecture. You have to state how to in.
When you're studying the ovary, or if you do study it before we get to it, you there is another structure called the corpus luteum. That's what happens to the tertiary follicle after the egg pops out. What's left becomes the corpus luteum. But we don't have any good slide for that. So that's why we're not looking at that other main structure that you see in the ovary. But only certain days of the ovarian cycle. Anyway, we don't look at it under the microscope.
It's fine.
What? Well, can you see them? I'm trying to make it so you can see the down.
This test.
Yeah, but it's still not very.
They look pretty good on the right side.
Oh, they do? Okay. Well, anyway, that's not good.
No, just fine.
You know, there's, I mean, you just really just
There.
trying to see the head. And the tail's kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
If you look through here, it's better. Can you see? It's kind of not the best view of sperm. Anyway, that's all you can make out is the head and the tail.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, that's all you're seeing. Alright, so, the other slides, you know, I'll come around and see if you're still having trouble with them. I will eventually show you all of them, not all today though, but,
Oh, sorry.
in our next lab on development, I can show you a few more, and then we have a review lab, I can show you the rest of